I still remember the first time someone laughed at my cooking. Funny thing is, those laughs used to sting like salt on an open wound, but tonight, they echo in my head like background music to my triumph. The dining room of Parker's table glows under warm chandeliers, the sound of polished silver against porcelain mixing with the soft hum of jazz. I smooth the silk sleeve of my emerald blouse and glance across the room. Every table is full. Couples whisper, critics take notes discreetly, and a few regulars lift their glasses to me in quiet acknowledgement. Michelin stars. 2 of them, to be exact. I've reached a place even my wildest dreams once refused to imagine. Yet inside, I carry scars no one sees. Just as I step back toward the kitchen, my phone buzzes on the hostess stand. A name flashes on the screen, one I haven't seen in years. My heart stutters. Claire Donovan, the same cousin who once spat out a spoonful of my soup and told everyone at Thanksgiving I couldn't cook to save my life. I stare at the glowing screen. My hand trembles just slightly, though I cover it by tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. For a moment, I consider ignoring it. But then, something steadies in my chest. No. Tonight is different. Tonight, I face it. I swipe to answer. Hello. The sound of Claire's voice pulls me straight back into a memory I've tried to bury for years. I was 19 then, standing in my mother's kitchen in Austin, Texas, hair tied messily with a rubber band, hands dusted in flour. Thanksgiving was always my chance to prove myself, to show the family that my love for cooking was more than a hobby. I wanted them to see that my dream, to become a chef, wasn't some childish fantasy. That year, I worked for days. Homemade pumpkin ravioli, roasted garlic turkey, apple tarts brushed with honey. My hands were raw from peeling, my eyes burned from onions, and still, I smiled. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time they would taste what I felt in my heart. Instead, I'll never forget the sound of laughter. Claire was the ringleader, always quick with a sharp tongue. She took one bite of my ravioli, scrunched her nose, and spat it into a napkin. God, Maddie, she said loudly enough for the whole table to hear. Are you trying to poison us? You'll never make it in a real kitchen. The room erupted in chuckles. Even my brother snickered, whispering something under his breath. I felt my throat tighten, the sting of humiliation, so sharp it was hard to swallow. My hands shook as I reached for the serving dish, pretending I didn't care. But inside I was breaking. And then my grandmother, quiet, gentle, always watching, slid something into my hand. A small, leather-bound recipe book, edges worn soft with age. Cook with love, she whispered, her fingers brushing mine. When they laugh, let the food speak louder. Her words clung to me like an anchor. That night, I locked myself in my room, clutching the recipe book to my chest as tears stained the pages. For the first time, I understood. If I stayed here, in this house, in this small world that never believed in me, I would wither. The very next morning, with nothing more than a duffel bag and my grandmother's book, I packed up my life and left. No goodbye. No second thoughts. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. If the world wanted to laugh at me, they would have to do it while choking on the taste of my success. Austin disappeared in my rearview mirror that morning, but the echo of Claire's laughter stayed lodged in my chest for months. I had only a few $100s, a duffel bag, and that leather-bound recipe book my grandmother gave me. I landed in Houston, where the only work I could find was bussing tables at a greasy diner off the interstate. The pay was laughable, but I didn't care. I was inside a kitchen. I scrubbed plates until my knuckles cracked, wiped tables until midnight, and stole glances at the cooks as they tossed food on sizzling pans. I memorized everything, the way they held knives, the way they balanced heat and timing. At first, no one noticed me. I was just a skinny girl with tired eyes and no real experience. But one night, the line cook called in sick, and the owner, Mr. Rodriguez, barked at me to step up. "Can you cook a burger without burning down my kitchen?" he asked. My hands shook as I nodded. I'd never cooked on a professional grill before, but I heard my grandmother's voice in my head, "Cook with love." The burger came out juicy, topped with caramelized onions I whipped up instinctively. A trucker at the counter took one bite and said, "Damn, best burger I've had in years." That was my first win. Small, but it lit something inside me. From there, I hustled harder. I spent nights experimenting with flavors after my shift, using scraps the cooks let me take home. I started saving every dollar until I could afford community college culinary classes. That's where I met Chef Diane Brooks, stern, demanding, but brilliant. She was one of the few women in a male-dominated program, and she recognized something in me others didn't. "You've got instincts," she told me one day, tasting my citrus-glazed salmon. "Refine them and you'll fly." Her belief in me was oxygen. Under her mentorship, I learned precision knife cuts, sauces, plating. She pushed me to the edge, and I grew sharper every week. Still, it wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep on a futon in a shared apartment, wondering if I was insane to keep going. There were days when burns blistered my arms, when sexist remarks from male classmates made me want to disappear. But every obstacle became fuel. I won a small cooking competition at school. A year later, I landed a line cook position at a French bistro. From there, a promotion to sous chef. And slowly, without ever telling my family, I started building my empire. I didn't post about the long hours, the awards, or the reviews in local papers. To them, I was still trying to figure things out. Let them think I was lost. The truth was, I was quietly constructing a kingdom one plate at a time. By the time I signed the lease for my own place, what would become Parker's Table, I had learned to keep my victories close. Because someday, I knew the people who mocked me would see it all, served on silver platters. The phone call from Claire replayed in my head for hours after I hung up. She didn't say much, just that she was in town and wanted to meet for dinner. The irony was almost comical. She had no idea she'd already booked a table at my restaurant. When the hostess whispered, "Your party of 6 is here," my chest tightened. I peeked out from the kitchen doors. And there they were, Claire, her parents, my brother Daniel, and a few other relatives I hadn't seen in years. They looked older, heavier with time, but their laughter was the same. For a moment, I wasn't Madeline Parker, owner of a Michelin-starred restaurant. I was 19 again, standing with flour on my cheeks, listening to their jokes at my expense. I forced myself to breathe, smoothed my apron, and stepped back into the kitchen. "Table 12, I told my staff, voice steady. "Make it flawless." The courses rolled out: seared scallops with lemon beurre blanc, herb-crusted lamb, truffle risotto. Each dish plated with care, each flavor layered with precision. I watched from a distance as they ate, their faces shifting from casual conversation to surprised murmurs. Claire lifted her glass of Bordeaux, eyes widening at the lamb. Daniel leaned back in his chair, silent for once, as though words couldn't quite form. Finally, Claire asked the question I was waiting for. "Can we meet the chef?" The hostess nodded toward me. I walked forward, heels tapping against the hardwood, stopping just beside their table. For a heartbeat, no one recognized me. I had traded my flower-streaked sweatshirts for a tailored black dress, my shy slouch for steady posture. Then Daniel's jaw dropped. "Maddie." Claire's fork clattered against her plate. "Wait, you're the chef?" I smiled faintly. "Not just the chef." I gestured around the room. "This is my restaurant. Parker's Table. 2 Michelin stars. Welcome." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the faint jazz humming through the speakers. Claire blinked as if trying to process the words. My uncle cleared his throat awkwardly. "You own this?" he asked. "Yes," I said softly but firmly. "Every inch of it." I let the moment stretch, savoring it like a slow sip of wine. Their disbelief was almost tangible, hanging heavy in the air. Claire's cheeks flushed red, her bravado slipping. "You mean to tell me," she stammered, "that the girl who couldn't cook pasta without burning it just served you one of the most critically acclaimed menus in the state?" I interrupted, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut. Daniel leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You never told us." "Why would I?" I tilted my head. "You all made it very clear what you thought of my dreams. Maybe it was better that way." It gave me silence to work, to build. I could see the weight of shame pressing down on them, the reality sinking in. Every laugh, every insult, every careless dismissal, they had all aged into this single, brutal truth. They had been wrong. Claire tried to recover, forcing a laugh that cracked in her throat. Well, I guess we misjudged you, Maddie. I leaned closer, just enough for my words to sting. You didn't just misjudge me, Claire. You mocked me. You belittled something that was part of my soul. And tonight, you paid for the privilege of eating what you once spat out. Her face crumbled. Daniel stared into his wine glass. The table, once full of chatter, had fallen silent. And for the first time in years, I felt taller than all of them. I didn't sit at their table right away. Instead, I let the silence breathe, let them squirm in the weight of it. The same people who once laughed at me were now guests in a place that bore my name in gold letters above the entrance. Finally, I slid into the empty chair at the end of their table. My hands rested calmly on the linen cloth, nails polished in a deep burgundy that caught the low light. I didn't bring you here to embarrass you, I said, my voice measured. But if you're in my restaurant eating my food, we're going to set a few things straight. Claire opened her mouth, but I held up a hand.
First, respect.
If you want a relationship with me, respect my work and my choices. No more jokes. No more dismissals. Cooking is not a hobby, it's my life. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She nodded slowly. I turned to my brother. Daniel, you've always thought of me as the little sister who couldn't measure up. But I've built something real, and I won't let you diminish it. If you want to be part of my world now, you need to start treating me as an equal, not as a punchline. His eyes dropped. For once, he didn't argue. Then I leaned back, letting my gaze sweep across the table. Second, honesty. You don't get to suddenly claim pride in me now that success is visible. You weren't there in the diners, the kitchens, the nights I burned my arms on pans and went to sleep hungry. So if you're going to be in my life, I need truth, not sugarcoating. My uncle cleared his throat again, softer this time. You're right, Maddie. We weren't fair. And third, I paused, my grandmother's words echoing in my head. Cook with love. I drew in a slow breath. Healing. I'm not holding on to anger forever, but I'm also not pretending the past didn't happen. If you want a seat at my table, literally or figuratively, you'll need to do your own work. Change the way you speak to people. Stop cutting others down. Learn what it means to build instead of break. The weight of my words lingered. No one moved. For the first time, I wasn't begging for their approval. I wasn't chasing scraps of encouragement. The balance had shifted. You're welcome here, I added, finally softening, but only if you come with respect, honesty, and the intention to grow. Otherwise, I gestured around us, the candlelit elegance, the aroma of truffles in the air. You can enjoy tonight, and that will be the last meal you ever have at Parker's table. The silence stretched again, but this time, it was different. There was no mockery, only humility. Claire's voice broke it, quiet and shaky. I understand. And for the first time in my life, I believed she actually meant it. In the weeks that followed, I kept my distance, unsure if my family's promises would hold. Words are easy, change is harder. But then, small signs appeared. Daniel sent me a photo one evening, him in his kitchen, apron crooked, proudly holding up a plate of roasted chicken. The caption read, "Not Michelin, but edible. Thanks for inspiring me to try." Claire showed up quietly one Saturday afternoon, without the entourage. She carried a battered grocery bag full of fresh herbs and vegetables. "Teach me," she said simply, her voice stripped of arrogance. For the first time since we were kids, I saw sincerity in her eyes. We chopped, sautéed, and laughed in my restaurant's kitchen after hours. Her knife skills were terrible, but her willingness, that was new. It wasn't perfect. Healing never is. But I could feel the ground shifting, the sharp edges of old wounds softening into something almost tender. One night, after the last guests had left and the dining room was silent, I pulled out the leather-bound recipe book my grandmother had given me. Its cover was worn, pages stained with oils and spices, but it was still whole. just like me. I ran my fingers over her handwriting, the faded ink of her notes. Cook with love. Let them taste your heart. I whispered it aloud, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a desperate reminder. It felt like truth realized. I thought back to the girl who left Austin with nothing but a bag and a dream. She had been small, scared, uncertain. But she had been brave. And that bravery had grown into a woman who built something lasting, something that carried her name in shining gold above the door. I stepped out into the night air, the city lights flickering like stars around me. The world was wide, and for once, I wasn't afraid of its size. Because I had proven something, not just to Claire or Daniel, or anyone else who doubted me, but to myself. I closed my eyes, took in the scent of rosemary from the herb pots outside the door, and smiled. They mocked my cooking, I murmured to the quiet street. But now, the world savors my soul, plated in stars.